The best horror games may not be the most comforting things to play, but they'll definitely get your adrenaline rushing. There were some fantastic additions to the horror game genre last year. Alan Wake 2, The Resident Evil 4 Remake, and Amnesia The Bunker were all great entries. While some of these are certainly scarier than others, they are all brilliant games to play if you enjoy painfully unsettling locations and frightening chase sequences. This list has you covered for all the latest and greatest entries to the horror genre. Alan Wake 2. If you're a fan of horror, then Alan Wake 2 is a must-buy. There are some outstanding options for the genre, but none of them manage to pull off every aspect of horror as well as this survival horror game. There are beautiful graphics and imagery as the title expertly combines the two worlds of the protagonists, Alan Wake and Saga Anderson, as well as reality and video games and expertly shot cutscenes. The beginning few hours may be too terrifying even for veteran players. However, like in any good survival game, the more you play, the more confidence you get from recognizing fight patterns and gathering resources that will help you push forward. Keep going, and you will be rewarded tremendously. Little Nightmares. In Little Nightmares, you control a young girl called Six who has to navigate a frightening world, far too big for her, populated by a wide array of giant and grotesque creatures. Six is just a small girl, so you sneak past them instead of fighting these creatures. The tension in this best horror games contender comes from navigating complicated platforming sections while also being pursued by monsters. Little Nightmares is a deserved entry on our best horror games list because it creates a feeling of helplessness while making it clear that you still have ways to escape. The Evil Within 2. The Evil Within series comes from Shinji Mikami, the mind behind Resident Evil, and if that doesn't give you enough reason to pick it up, its nightmarish world likely will. This third-person survival horror will pull you into a world populated by grotesque and frightening enemies. Mixed with dashes of psychological horror, protagonist Sebastian Castellanos never quite knows what's real and what's a horror cooked up by his own mind. The Evil Within 2 makes its way onto our best horror games list as it succeeded in modernizing Japanese horror, making it less janky and more approachable. While the first game is good in its own right, the sequel has some unforgettable psychological scare tactics. Dead by Daylight. Dead by Daylight stands out in this list of best horror games for being a genuinely scary multiplayer title, showing that you don't have to be alone in the dark to be scared. In Dead by Daylight, a single player takes on the role of a savage serial killer, while four others flee for their lives, desperately trying to fix generators to secure their freedom. With a host of original characters, each with their own abilities and advantages, there are many of tactics to develop and deploy or kill all the survivors or make your escape. You can also unlock or download characters from films such as Saw, A Nightmare on Elm Street, or the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, which showcases the genuine love Dead by Daylight devs have for its cinematic roots. Biohazard Resident Evil 7. Resident Evil 7 was a breath of fresh air for an increasingly stale series. While it's not the only Resident Evil title on our best horror games list, it brought a much-needed modern understanding of horror movies and games to the series while retaining that distinct Resident Evil feel. With a great story and tight gameplay, Resident Evil 7 was the addition to the horror series we all wanted and feared we wouldn't get. The game's success, along with the recent remakes of earlier titles in the series, gained a lot of new fans. Until Dawn. This best horror game entry changed what was possible for the genre of horror. Instead of going the classic survival horror route, Until Dawn pioneered a new interactive horror trope. This provided players with the chance to experience a story, like something you'd see in a horror movie, and decide the outcomes of all the characters through decision-making and quick-time events. There are tons of fascinating twists and turns in this horror mystery. It's the perfect game to play around Halloween, either by yourself or streaming for friends. Alien Isolation. Taking on a first-person perspective and squaring you off with a single xenomorph hunting you across a vast space station in darkness. Alien Isolation nails what it felt like watching the film for the first time. Throw in the excruciatingly clever artificial intelligence afforded to the alien, along with an absolutely gripping virtual reality experiment, and you have the trappings of a modern horror classic. The Outlast Trials. The Outlast Trials balances pure terror and hilarity like no other multiplayer horror game, making it a special entry on our best horror games list. There's multiple trials to put yourself through, either with friends or on your lonesome, each providing different ways to scare and horrify yourself. If you're looking for good old-fashioned jump scares and anxious hiding, look no further. The Outlast Trials has it all. Amnesia The Bunker. Amnesia The Bunker lives up to the petrifying history that this series has. With its claustrophobic, psychological, and bloody scares, this horror game is not to be taken lightly. Trapped in a bunker with only one exit available, you must navigate the dwindling light and precarious tunnels to complete the puzzles and secure the dynamite you need to explode your way to freedom. Can you solve the puzzles while fending off this monster? Probably not without experiencing some heart-stopping scares. This title is one of the scariest additions to our best horror games list, so play at your own risk. Visage. Visage made its way onto our best horror games list thanks to its eerily creepy psychological horror basis and its uncannily realistic environments. This first-person survival horror game is set inside a huge and terrifying house. Here you have to explore endless mazes which fill your head with the memories of all the dead families who used to occupy this place.